welcome to Games from Folktales, a podcast that mixes historical research and tabletop role-playing settings. I'm your host, Timothy Ferguson. This time, a brief episode about the street cry of the Afanc Exceller. I didn't write the Afancs for the Magonomia Bestiary, however, I did write the little song, the street cry of the Afanc Exceller. I took a few liberties with the history of street cries here. Let's step in for some context. The biggest market in London during the reign was Stocks Market. If you're looking for its historic site due to one of those twists of history, it's underneath Mansion House, which is the formal residence of the Lord Mayor of London. The market was set up for the coronation of Edward I in 1272 because people thought all the hawkers along Cheapside were a security threat to his coronation procession. Or at least they were unsightly and poor and noisy. They were all moved to the new site and laws were passed to make stall holding where people had traditionally had markets illegal. This didn't work. Similarly, monarchs since, including Elizabeth, attempted to stamp out street peddling and force people to go to the market, and this also did not work at all. In 1345, the poulterers, fish sellers and butchers of Cheapside were again moved on to Stocks Market. Eventually, the market became too large, and smaller parts broke off for other premises. Speaking loosely, the Stocks was the fish and flesh market. Accordingly, if you wanted vegetables, you needed to hike over to St. Paul's churchyard. We have to visit that area at some stage for Magonomia, because it's also the centre of London's book trade. If you were rich, you'd want meat from the Stocks Market. People who bought it from there were sick less often. It was by one of the little rivers that snaked through London, Walbrook, and water from it was used to wash things down. It even had a rudimentary sort of flushing toilet in period. By the game period, it was controlled by the wardens of London Bridge, and they rented out canopies for life tenures. Its name comes from the stocks, the punishment device, which was in Stocks Market. I'd have put it near the fruit sellers, but they didn't ask me. This was the one set of stocks for the City of London. That seems less unlikely when you remember that at this point many parts of modern London were separate towns or villages. This is also the origin of the word stock market, although if you wanted to invest and do financial things in period, you'd do better at the coffee houses near the Royal Exchange. Stockbrokers weren't allowed in the Royal Exchange itself because their manners were bad, something they really leaned in on with the men shouting in a pit model that immediately predated computerization. So the stock market is crowded and loud, and if you're peddling, you need to get people to look up from their work and come out into the street to buy your stuff. Enter the street cry. Street cries have been recorded since Roman times, but the sort of melodic street cry we included here is most well known from the Victorian period. It is very long for a street cry, but there are recorded examples which are even longer. These focus on goods that the customers do not know and would not otherwise buy. So the street cry for fresh fish in London was a couple of words long, whereas the street cries for apothecaries, which are the closest thing we're going to get to the street cries for magicians, sound more like snake oil patter. They talk about how rare the ingredients are, how far they've been shipped, and how many things they can cure. Eventually in London and other cities with strong guilds, people with staples developed a single cry for each product, so if you heard a particular tune, even if you couldn't make out the words, you'd know what was being said. Over in the Venetian stories, we have the alternative. The American consul in Venice reported that he kept seeing a girl with bloodshot eyes in his street, and he eventually discovered that she was a pear seller who yelled the name of her wares so loudly each day that it caused subpetechial hemorrhaging. I'm reminded locally that a company has reconditioned a set of old ice cream trucks, and so my children have learned that a truck playing Greensleeves in the street is offering ice cream. Greensleeves really wasn't written by Henry VIII to seduce the Queen's mother, but you could use it in that way in your game if you wanted. We know that King Hal did have his own band and did perform on stage. We know there were street cries in London a century before Elizabeth's reign, because a poem from 410 says the vendors were crying, "Strawberries ripe and cherries on the rise." I should record that poem eventually. It's called The London Lickpenny, and it's about a man touring the capital and being ripped off. You have probably heard the Victorian version of Strawberries Ripe. It's in the musical Oliver as part of the Market Cry melody. I'm not a musical person, so I won't torture you with any of the instruments. I play badly. I'm not sure when it swapped from plain cry to melodic cry, But there's my tenuous link to say that a likely lad could have come up with a performance poem to sell monster eggs, and because they're a new product, he needed it to be long. I say lad in this case because I came up with it when I was standing about during COVID chaperoning at work, and I had a daydream as clear as day in which a version of the Artful Dodger came up to me and said, "Scoop of the arse spider eggs, Gov. Fresh today." He would not, in the real world, have said fresh, which in period meant unsalted, as in fresh water. He would have said new. There are period records of fishwives yelling, "New salmon," for example. When I was writing it, I did have a tune in mind. It's the second line of Three Blind Mice, but with the pauses moved around, so "see how they run" becomes "arse spider eggs." The even verses are a version of Pop Goes the Weasel with a similar bit of shifting about. The sad thing is I have accidentally used the very best known of the surviving street cries for an already existing product, and no one in period would have done that. This is because Three Blind Mice shares its tune with Hot Cross Buns, which managed to escape extinction by becoming a nursery rhyme. There is, however, a way out for me yet. A few other street cries have survived similarly as fossils in other work. The somewhat chesty lady in the episode art is a statue representing Molly Malone, a famous fishmonger and ghost of old Dublin town, whose cry you can hear in many Irish pubs on the regular. As anyone who's gone to these things knows, there are traditional gestures for when someone drunkenly sings the bit about cockles and mussels. To make the Arse Spider Egg song different from Hot Cross Buns, you just need to slap your ass hard enough for it to be a percussive element before each line. In a way, this is an unnecessary precaution because Hot Cross Buns used to be a festive food, only available for a brief window after Lent. Some versions of the song say they are made only on Good Friday. It seems odd that something heard so little is the great survival of the Darwinian song contest of the market, but they were pitched as a treat for children, which is how the song slid across into the nursery. Your saga may vary.